Hey everybody, welcome back to Giant Talk, the world's first OKR podcast, brought to you alongside Coan, the OKR software. This week we're back for another episode, and I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Greenley from Victoria Plum. Welcome, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Lawrence. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. The sun's out in Manchester, which makes a nice change. So, Victoria Plum, obviously a household name in the UK. I'm sure every UK listener's heard of you, but we do have a large international audience. So, can you start off just by telling us, I guess, who the company are and who you are and what you do there, I suppose?
Yeah, so I'm Mark. I'm the head of business transformation at Victoria Plum, and we are an online bathroom retailer, which means we sell exclusively online. We don't have any physical stores, and we've been in operation now for around about 15 years. And we've essentially kind of started the online bathroom market in the UK, certainly. And it's a model that has been kind of heavily copied by our competitors over the years, which has led to the overall kind of online bathroom market, if you like, being highly competitive, based around kind of price and promotion. And what we're trying to do is find points of differentiation in the user's online experience and the online journeys that are much more meaningful, much more customer centric than just being about price and promotion.
Interesting. So, have you been in Victoria Plum then since their conception, or have you joined recently?
No, I've been here for about 3 years now. I actually started my life here as head of digital products. So essentially kind of growing a team of product managers who think a lot about the customer, think a lot about their journey and how we can solve their buying problems, if you like. Essentially buying a bathroom online is quite a challenging process. First of all, we have to inspire people. We have to sort of demonstrate that we've got the right product for them and the right style for them, but also we have to make it easier for them to understand the kind of the behind the scenes bits that they might need, the sort of the technical stuff. Because obviously planning a bathroom is one thing, but installing it is another. Absolutely. So these are all things that we have to sort of try and engage with from an online journey perspective to make it as sort of frictionless as possible for our customers to do business with us.
Right. Okay, so head of business transformation then, what does that mean?
Well, this is an interesting one because in my previous role, as I said, I was head of digital product. And one of the things that in that role, one of the things we're trying to do is to connect the experiences we were creating and building for our customers with the kind of the metrics that the exec team cared about. And for us, these are things like AOV, so average order value, and conversion rate. Right. And to a lesser extent, what we call carriage, which is the amount of revenue we make on delivery, essentially.
Right.
So those are our principal big metrics. But what we were finding was that because they are so kind of open to, so let's say, influence from all sorts of places within the business. You know, the buying team might buy different products, which influences our AOV. We might change prices, which impacts our conversion. We might make changes on the website, again, which may have an effect. Very often what we didn't know is how big the effect was. So right. What we tried to do was to try and find more granular metrics that which indicated kind of customer behavior, kind of almost like leading metrics that from a user experience perspective, we could try and influence by building the right kind of tools and features, etc., on the website, which would then influence again a more granular metric, which then would stack up into one of the big three, if you like, that our execs care about. And this was really difficult, actually. This was really difficult to unpick the more granular stuff from the big metric. And so we had a number of workshops around the business, and as a result of that, we kind of went away and just by looking online for a way of better doing this, came across the concept of OKR. Right.
Okay. So was it you that discovered OKRs, or someone else in the business?
Yeah. No, it was me, actually, and it was. I think it was a blog post, or then that kind of leads to more blog posts, and you kind of follow the trail online. Yeah. Then I then came across Measure What Matters, I think, as many people do.
Absolutely.
And read that, and I suppose kind of give it some consideration, thought about what it actually might mean for us, and spent a little bit of time working with maybe a dozen people around the business, just to kind of push and pull the concept. How would it work for us, given the fact that we'd had this kind of awkward period where we were trying to connect these big measures, these big three metrics, if you like, to customer experience. I wanted to try and sort of pressure test the concept of OKR. So we did that kind of very softly, without any fanfare around the business. And it was generally felt that whilst it can be a challenging concept at times, it would add significant value. So after doing that, I encouraged my boss, the CEO, to have a look at Measure What Matters. He read it, I think, on a flight to the States, and when he kind of got off, he sent me an email saying, "This is great. Can you implement it?" And so that's when I kind of became interested in transformation as opposed to digital product.
Interesting. So you were put in charge of spearheading the project then, were you?
Yeah, essentially.
So you your head of business transformation job title could now be boiled down to the OKR bloke, could it?
No, I think we've very much tried to view it through a lens of transformation.
Right.
And the reason is that although OKR is I think it's a really effective way of connecting our colleagues around the business to our strategy and to effectively execute against strategy. And so I think we understand that that's a really important part of what we're doing to change. And I've certainly spent a lot of time kind of evangelizing the concept of OKR. What we think of it is as part of an overall journey of transformation. And the reason of that is that we firmly believe that the real value comes in a change in mindset and behavior and sort of broad business culture around the place, if you like, to unlock the true value, the true potential of OKR. And in that, I'd sort of liken it to, maybe a conversation that your listeners might be more used to, which is around agile ways of working.
Right.
We kind of know that, and having kind of put agile into Victoria Plum as well, we know that actually if you go so far as working with the engineering team and UX guys around agile, around the process, if you don't address some of the underlying kind of behavioral challenges, let's say mindset challenges, you'll only get so far with it. So it's very much something kind of entering into this process I was aware we needed to tackle as well.
Okay, so did you start on the transformation work before you actually introduced the concept of OKRs, or was it all sort of done in one fell swoop?
It was kind of organic, actually. We introduced the concept of OKR whilst at the same time saying there's an opportunity for us to evolve our culture. And we were very keen for it. I mean, I work within the exec team, so I was very keen that this becomes a thing that lives and breathes in the kind of grassroots of the business. Absolutely. As opposed to it being like kind of a top-down we must do this thing because it sounds great. And, whilst, I'm very much aware that it needs a kickstart and sort of guidance and leadership from the top, if you like, without kind of that grassroots engagement and real understanding and buy-in, actually it's not going to have much life.
No, I completely.
So it's very much a case of saying to the organisation, yes, we've got this thing that we believe is called OKR, that we believe is going to really help us to solve the meaningful problems that we know our customers have. But at the same time, we need to tackle the culture question.
So what was that culture question then that you were trying to address?
I think we haven't got a bad culture, right? I think generally speaking, we have good people who are very knowledgeable. They care about what they do, they care about the organisation. But I think we're looking for that extra piece of the puzzle, if you like, that gives us trying to find the right words, but it's the improve those day-to-day conversations, those micro interactions with one another that really open people up to possibility and curiosity. And from that, we kind of genuinely believe we'll find innovation. And as I said before, we don't want things. If the culture's been anything in the past, it's been very much kind of command and control from the top,
right?
Which I do believe kind of, whilst can take us so far, and we've seen some sort of great growth within the business over the last few years. I think that kind of command and control from the top it limits us, because it doesn't engage the organisation, the full kind of collective energy, enthusiasm, and experience and knowledge of the business.
I completely agree, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that most people, most staff, most employees, no matter the size of the team or where they come from, have these sparks of innovation and inspiration within them, but they have to be provided with a framework and opportunity to explore them further, I suppose, and actually present them as ideas.
Yeah, I mean, at the very basic level, 2 years ago, we might have thought, right, we want to launch a certain proposition. The problem and the challenge would and the solution, by the way, would have originated within the exec team, and it would manifest itself as teams having to do certain things. It kind of removes, in some respects, the what we were talking about before, that curiosity, that energy, that sense of innovation. From teams, from individuals. So we were very much aware that, for us to kind of unlock that nascent kind of power, we needed to think differently and behave differently, and encourage a kind of an environment where, we look for a lot of some things you wouldn't necessarily expect as well. Things like compassion, patience, being able to listen, to clear one's own agenda, and in that way kind of bring new people's voices into it. And I think, I suppose linking it back to OKR, what that does, if we can operate that from the ground up, it means that we've got genuine kind of commitment to the problems we want to try and solve, because everybody has got a stake in it, in theory. So yeah, that we're very mindful that the greater part of this value will come from having more engaged, more fulfilled, more empowered colleagues.
Absolutely.
And OKR is just the framework for delivery at that point.
So I love how Koan is designed with the team in mind. The team is really at the centre of the system, and it's about helping the team and the members of those teams, obviously, to really collaborate on how they work with OKRs. I mean, there's obviously full transparency across the system, which helps. And then the features that they have around feedback and being able to track levels of confidence and so on and so forth around progress against OKRs. It's amazing, and because of that level of transparency, it builds accountability and fosters some great communication. So, yeah, I love how teams are just at the centre of the system.
So, how long have you had OKRs in play now? Then
we're in our third quarter,
right?
And so we're still learning in terms of the basic process of OKR.
Sure,
we don't by any means profess to be kind of perfect in this yet. And I think what's been helpful is that we are trying to frame it as a journey rather than a destination. That this is something that actually we'll constantly be looking at. We'll constantly be kind of reviewing it, how well we're doing it. This isn't sort of a static, fixed kind of endpoint we're going for. We do accept that it's kind of emergent, and that we'll improve over time.
It's got to be an evolving thing for always, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Because, things are going to have an impact. The way the market changes will have an impact on the process. The way the company scales and grows will have an impact on the process. All of these things, whether internal or external, can mean that the process needs to run differently, which is why it can't be a destination. It's got to be a journey. That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, and I think one thing, again, I sort of touched on earlier, that the world of kind of retail, and in particular kind of online bathroom retailing is extremely competitive. And I think what OKR gives us, and what this kind of shift in thinking and mindset gives us, is a view that actually we can create value for ourselves. Right. We don't need to necessarily be looking over our shoulder all the time at what our competitors are doing. We should sort of build within ourselves a sense of, opportunity and resilience and grit and determination, but match that with a kind of care and compassion for one another and our customer as well.
Yeah.
To ultimately produce a better product for people, and I think we see that should give us a win-win. Ultimately, the customer is the most important person in this process, or it should be, because they're the ones that, if we can really understand what they need, and for us to sort of respond to that in the proper way, they'll reward us by kind of doing business with us and recommending us to their friends and family, etc. So we're kind of looking for a bit of a virtuous circle with it.
Absolutely, yeah. Would you say that you faced any problems with the change management and transformation whilst you were rolling out OKRs over the past 9 months?
I think, if I was to do it again from the beginning, I would look to engage more before we sort of said, right, we're doing this thing.
Right.
And I think almost in our over enthusiasm for OKR, we sort of said to the business, here's this thing, we're doing it. You'll start to hear more about it, but that's it, we're doing it. And in some ways it was a good thing, because it meant that we showed our commitment to the process, and we kind of firmly, put that out there, if you like. But what I had to spend quite a lot of time doing was a lot of one-to-one conversations, a lot of team workshops, just kind of exploring the concepts. And the benefits and the reasons why we're doing it, just to kind of build that sense of buy-in and engagement with the process. So I think, I would have built that first. I think, as I say, we jumped in 2 feet with an abundance of enthusiasm rather than anything else.
At least the enthusiasm was there. I mean, has this been a project that's been very much spearheaded by the exec team?
I I suppose in the fact that I'm in the exec team and stand up in front of people on a regular basis talking about OKR and increasingly culture, then I think yes, to an extent it's been led from the front, but equally one of the things that I was really keen to do, as I said before, kind of to build that kind of grassroots buy-in and understanding of the process.
Yeah.
I set up what we call OKR ambassadors. So I invited people to essentially kind of become an OKR ambassador, initially with the sense that they would understand what OKR is, be able to support colleagues in the writing of OKR and how they connect and so on and so on. But what that kind of group has quickly become is much more around how we generate really meaningful pockets of leadership around the business.
Right.
So whilst we've got, I think what I would call it is bidirectional. So the exec team can sort of evangelize, let's say, for OKR and an improvement or evolution of culture, but that's met from our colleagues, if you like, with actual practical tools and experience, if you like, around the process, and we kind of meet in the middle. So I think the word I would use is bidirectional on that, rather than it being led from the top.
Right. No, that's good to hear. I mean, when we're creating OKR ambassadors with our clients, we always say that they should not be at like the C-suite or exec level. They need to be at a middle management level, really, for them to have the highest impact. And I think you've got that spot on by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything; it's a work in progress, but it's one I think that people believe in. Yeah. And the good thing is that I hear back now through just chatting to people in conversations that OKR is being talked about when I'm not in the room, which actually was a really, when I first sort of heard that, it was a real kind of moment. Yeah. That, wow, people are talking about it, and
the culture's moving towards it.
Yeah, and yeah, so that was a sort of a real moment for me a few months ago, when I kind of started to hear the words being used without me being in the room.
Yeah, that's really good. That's great. What do you think the most successful impact of OKRs has been in the short time that you've been using them?
I think a sense of empowerment. And again, this is a journey, but I think that we're getting more and more of the business involved in creating OKR, but also for them to be able to, almost the kind of task level, that they're able to generate ideas that become tasks that feed into the key results that hopefully start to answer the objective at the top.
Yeah.
So I think it's that level of engagement that we're seeing that one of the most interesting things is, and it's because I think we're still fairly young in the process, that in terms of the key results, we're seeing very gradual progression, if you like, as we learn more about the process and get better at doing it, understand the data and the measures better. What we are seeing very much is like a benefit of almost like the network effect within the business.
Right.
So that kind of breaking down of silos, that the functional areas that I think were almost sort of walled gardens previously. Right. What we're seeing is that because we're having very much like cross-functional teams working on OKR, at the very, very minimum, and this is a brilliant benefit in its own right, is that it's generating, stimulating meaningful conversations with between people who wouldn't ordinarily talk to one another.
Yeah, that's really good.
And so even they understand a little bit more about that person's work and what they're doing and their team and their function and their day to day. Again, coming back to culture, what that does is it creates a sense of belonging, shared experience, empathy, and all those sorts of things. And there's almost like a social credit that builds up. between these teams as they work. That actually, whereas before there might be a bit of friction, a bit of, I'm not going to do it for them because I'm too busy doing this thing for me. And so what we're seeing now is because those kind of edges have been blurred between teams, between functional teams, that we're learning about one another more.
Yeah, that's really important, especially as you start to scale it more. That'll have such a positive impact, both on the growth of the company, but also the culture within the company.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really interesting. So finally, Mark, what would the one piece of advice be that you would give to an individual or a company that's about to kick off their OKR journey?
I think recognize that it's not necessarily just about OKR.
Yeah.
I think we can get obsessed by these terms, and I am a complete evangelist for the actual process of OKR, the concept of it. But I think what we need to understand is that, or I encourage people to explore, is that it's about much more than that. It's about how we can power up our organizations from a culture and a mindset and a behavior perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's where you've got to start, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've certainly got to have it in mind when you're planning your rollout, because it sounds like you guys were sensible. You did a pilot, didn't you? Which department did you do the pilot in?
Well, yeah, we did do a pilot, and I think the challenge we had, because we did it with the exec team to start with,
right?
And the reason we did it that way was because we kind of came at it already through our year. So we started in April last year, and for us that's already 2 months into our financial year. So we had a load of stuff already planned strategically, in the pipeline per department, in terms of initiatives and plans and stuff we were going to do. So we had a little bit of a challenging start, let's say, because we'd spent a great deal of time trying to almost retrofit OKR into kind of our previous planning.
Yeah.
And that was we learned a lot, let's say, of how not to do things more than anything.
Which is just as important sometimes. Test, learn, adapt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're always very aware that we were doing that. We were kind of doing this retrofit process.
Yeah.
And gradually, as we kind of progressed through to kind of Q3, Q4, we were able to sort of uncouple ourselves from that previous year's kind of strategy and planning, because more and more stuff kind of got ticked off and or binned, if you like, and we were able to then look at things afresh, and so much so actually that we used the method of OKR to kind of steer our strategic planning for FY21, which for us starts actually next week.
Right.
So we actually started that about last October, which kind of broadly fits with our kind of budget planning cycle.
Yeah.
But again, that was sort of an encouraging thing for us, that we actually were able to use the concept of OKR to actually layer in to the meaningful things that we were looking at from a strategy perspective, knowing that we were going to use OKR as a method of execution.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So we kind of set up in a much sort of stronger position going into our new year, if you like, having kind of laid the groundwork for it from an OKR perspective.
Brilliant. Well, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really interesting to hear your guys' story about how OKRs have gone, and I'm glad to hear that it's going successfully, and I think continued success is on the horizon by the sounds of it with OKRs.
Hopefully, yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to talk.
Good, absolutely. Thanks again to everybody listening. Don't forget to let us know your thoughts and comments via the hashtag #GiantTalk. If there's anything you'd like us to talk about, let us know. If there's anybody you'd like us to talk to, then please do let us know and we'll reach out to them. But until next time, enjoy your week and we'll speak to you again later. Cheers. Bye.